Donald Trump actually tracks. It's a very eclectic list. A lot of family members in his own businesses, but it includes Reince Priebus, his new chief of staff, of course, the actress Roma Downey, not sure why she's there, Sean Hannity, Geraldo Rivera, and the golfer Gary Player. Okay, that's the best portrait I can give you off of Twitter of the man. But his activity has accelerated as his following has accelerated. And as I say, it's now very big.
Well, we'd like to hear more from the many Americans who have made the trip to Washington and found the National Mall today to watch this historic occasion. And Chris Van Cleve is down there among them. Chris?
Well, Scott, we're seeing the crowd come in. It took a little while to get people in here, but now the general admission folks are filling in. They expected about 800,000 people to fill the mall, and if you look around, you can see it's starting to look like a sea of people that you would traditionally see during an inauguration. For the most part, these are Donald Trump supporters, but not exclusively. We have seen some protesters. We have seen some people with anti-Trump signs. For the most part, people are getting along, and it is a celebratory environment down here. Music is playing, and people are waiting for the show to get started.
Chris Van Cleve, thank you very much. You know, it is a matter of history that there were 3 United States presidents who boycotted the inauguration of their successor. John Adams refused to see Thomas Jefferson ascend to the presidency. His son, John Quincy Adams, did not want to see his enemy, Andrew Jackson, elevated to the presidency. And then Andrew Johnson refused to watch U.S. Grant take the oath. Nancy Cordes has been counting the noses of Democratic congressmen who have declined to be here today. Nancy?
And we're up to 62, Scott, who have announced that they will not be attending today's inauguration. Now, not all of them have said that they are boycotting this president-elect. Some just said that they don't plan to attend. But for the most part, they are doing this as a form of protest against some of the things that the president-elect has said, both during the campaign and in the months since. A number of them were inspired by Congressman John Lewis, who a couple of weeks ago said that he viewed the president-elect as illegitimate. And then, of course, the president-elect responded on Twitter, as you were just discussing. Many Democrats didn't like what he said about Congressman Lewis, and so that really hastened the number of Democrats who said that they're just not going to attend. That's about a quarter of the Democratic caucus that won't be here. Interestingly, not a single member of the Democratic caucus in the Senate has said that they're not going to be attending. They've all hung together. Senators have a different constituency than a lot of these House members. These House members come from overwhelmingly Democratic districts where they're not likely to experience a lot of backlash for boycotting the event today. For senators who represent an entire state, they have a different...
They lay out that the president has to be sworn in by noon on January 20th. I was wondering, why do they do it in the middle of winter? It happens to be a nice... I know.
Right,
yeah.
Andrew Jackson, the one everybody keeps referring to in 1829, is in March 5th,
Yes.
And so, it's a good springtime, renewal and all of that.
Jackson is an interesting reference because many people think that Donald Trump has some of Andrew Jackson in him.
Yeah, well, when Jackson was inaugurated, it was all of the swells in Washington, all the establishment in Washington, they were going crazy because he had come in promising not only that with his electorate, the people had elevated him, but he was going to turn everybody out of office. In other words, cabinet posts and all of that, they weren't going to continue. And so people were showing up. They didn't know who they were. They had to put a ship's cable across the east front of the White House because they were worried that people were going to overrun the new president. He didn't wear a hat, and he bowed to the crowd, showing that I am your servant. I am not a king. I am the person. I am there for you. And we all know about the White House later in the day, overrun with people. Jackson had to climb out the window. Why were they there, though? They wanted jobs. Yeah. They weren't there to say, we love you, Andy. They were there to say, yes, you promised reform, I know, but we want the jobs that you're kicking everybody out. So,
is this information you gleaned from writing a book about past campaigns?
Charlie, I was just going to say that. I was like, now's a good time to bring out that whistle-stop knowledge. I was just thinking that.
Yes, available bookstores, were you going to say?
Yes, I was going to say that.
Now, we're seeing another large motorcade here, and that's because it is the Clintons. Former First Lady, Senator, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton arriving there as well, along with her husband, former President Bill Clinton. Of course, a devastating defeat for her in this last election as she lost to Donald Trump, but she is showing her respect for the process and for
it's
the new
really
president of the
good to
United
see that,
States.
Nora.
Yes,
When
yes.
so many Democrats have said that they are not going to show up today, and when President Barack Obama was asked about it, he said, I can't speak for them. All I can say is I will be there.
And she's coming with a former president.
That's right.
Yeah.
It must be a moment for him to think, reflecting back on his own transfer of power, his own time when he was up there, how the country has changed.
And we just saw, of course, Vice President Dick Cheney and Lynn Chaney arriving in his signature cowboy hat, since he's a man from Wyoming.
Probably got
They
boots
will
on as well.
all these VIPs gathered there on the west front of the Capitol because Donald Trump is scheduled to arrive within the hour. We are waiting for the president-elect to leave the White House with the Obamas. In fact, the former president, he's not the former president yet, President Obama and the president-elect, they will ride together. And we'll bring it to you live when it happens. You are watching CBS News coverage of the inauguration of Donald J. Trump.
Is a Kenyan. He's of Kenyan because his dad is
The one politician you can rely on.
Good afternoon, Madam Secretary.
Is Secretary of State Elizabeth McCord.
You're kind of my hero.
I don't like you going to a country that's preparing for war.
I'm talking about doing what's right.
You know, there's nothing we can do.
That's what they always say. Until somebody does.
Taya Leone is Madam Secretary.
If we're gonna make history, let's make the good kind.
Madam Secretary, CBS Sundays.
Watch CBS Sports Fantasy Football today for in-depth advice to dominate your matchup this Sunday. Add the CBS Sports channel on Apple TV, Roku, or your connected device, and tune in Sunday through Friday for the latest insights on who to add, drop, start, trade, and more. Plus, with CBS Sports, you'll also get the latest analysis from Bill Ryder, Jonah Carey, and other trusted experts. Add the CBS Sports channel now to watch it all live or on demand.
How are jurors selected? The answer may surprise you.
I'm Dr. Jason Bull. I'm not a lawyer. I'm an expert in what's called trial science. I studied the jury's behavioral patterns. We know what they're thinking from the beginning. Everything my team learns allows us to assemble a mirror jury that's scary in its predictive efficiency. We'll know what a jury's going to bring back. We'll know because that's what we do.
Bull, Tuesdays, only CBS.
CBS Mondays. If you're hungry for comedy, you've come to the right place.
Are you finished with this half-eaten sandwich I just found in the couch?
Ham or peanut butter?
Peanut butter. Still working on it.
Meet TV's funniest odd couple.
Oscar.
Felix, shut up. Then sit back and relax.
Take your feet off of the coffee table. I just had it refinished, and for God's sake, use coasters.
The Odd Couple. CBS Mondays, or stream it live or on demand.
Should have used a coaster.
Get ready for the most inventive agent.
Oh, come on, this isn't fair.
Of all time.
My name's MacGyver. I use the tools around me to succeed.
How's he gonna stop an airplane?
Tinfoil.
He's kidding, right?
My man never jokes about tinfoil.
MacGyver, CBS Fridays, or stream it live or on demand.
Vous êtes française? On parle français, mais on n'est pas française. François is bullshit. Very true. Look at the gay. What do you say?
The bold and brilliant dream which excited the founders of this nation still awaits its consummation. I have no new dream to set forth today, but rather urge a fresh faith in the old dream. Ours was the first society openly to define itself in terms of both spirituality and human liberty. It is that unique self-definition which has given us an exceptional appeal. but it also imposes on us a special obligation to take on those moral duties which, when assumed, seem invariably to be in our own best interest.
Go to the ends of the earth. This is exciting. And reach for the stars.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
Experience thought-provoking, innovative, and truly original reporting.
Stand back.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
Face the Nation with John Dickerson. Sundays only on CBS.
We are waiting for the President-elect Donald Trump and President Barack Obama to exit the White House here on the North Portico with their wives, and then they will get in the presidential limo, which is also known as the Beast.
The Beast. Yes. They've been having tea and coffee for the last hour.
That's right.
I like how Andy Card told us in the last hour that it's an emotional time for both sides.
Yeah.
One is saying goodbye and one is saying hello.
And in terms of saying goodbye, we have just learned that earlier this morning, President Obama was presented by the resident staff that serves every president. They presented him with a flag from his first day in office and his last day in office. What an incredible
keepsake. What a nice thing to take away.
That is a treasure. We just saw Pete Souza, guys, leave the White House. The White House official photographer, which means POTUS cannot be far behind him.
That's right.
And we take note of the fact that this is a tradition that has gone almost without interruption since 1837. The outgoing president rides with the president-elect from the White House, where they are now, to the Capitol for the inauguration ceremony, and where the president-elect takes the oath of office.
And the White House confirmed that President Barack Obama did indeed leave a letter for President-elect Donald Trump. Why wouldn't we like to know what's in that? It'll be some time, if ever, we get to see the contents of that.
We're fortunate to have Major Garrett, who is at the White House awaiting the departure of the president and President-elect. Major?
Thankfully, and for posterity, President Obama allowed a little bit of video evidence of the fact that he did draft a letter for incoming President Trump and did leave it at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. I believe we can roll that video now. This is travel pool footage of the last time President Obama was in the Oval Office. I don't know if you see that ladder there. That is proof positive that this White House is in the middle of a transformation from one outgoing administration to the next. But there's the president there at the desk. He walked there with the letter in his hand, bending over the Resolute desk, leaving it there for incoming President Trump. That is a tradition that has been adhered to by many previous presidents. And, you know, we do have evidence of what these letters say to the incoming president. For example, we have copies of William Jefferson Clinton's letter to incoming President George W. Bush and George W. Bush's letter to incoming President Barack Obama. Interestingly, in William Jefferson Clinton's letter to George W. Bush, there's one line that jumped out at me. He said, "The burdens you will face are great, but often exaggerated." This is in a pre-9/11 context. And when then George W. Bush left his handwritten letter for incoming President Obama, one thing jumped out at me from that letter. He said, "Your friends will disappoint you." Many of these letters are about challenges and good wishes and the country is with you, but those two lines, one from William Jefferson Clinton saying about that the pressures and the burdens are often exaggerated, and George W. Bush saying your friends will disappoint you. Interesting lines given from one president to another as this transition continues.
At the same time, Major, President Bush went on to say, "You will have an almighty God to comfort you, a family who loves you, a country that is pulling for you, including me."
Yeah.
That's another part of these letters, that I'm with you, I'm here in spirit, I'm here in counsel. Call on me if you will, call on me if you want. What's interesting about the way President Obama is leaving, he's making it clear on this final day in office, with a video posted to his new website, that he intends to be engaged, to be active in the conversation about the direction of the country. He has made it clear he's going to take a little time off, but he is already volunteering himself as a voice, if one is necessary, possibly to oppose or possibly to redirect policies of President Trump. And it is certainly worth noting that these two gentlemen are meeting, and though the transition has been smooth and their relationship is certainly cordial, Outgoing President Obama knows a good deal of his legacy is now in the hands of a president who opposed it on the campaign trail and a Republican Congress who tried while he was president to undermine it, if not repeal it entirely. So much of the Obama legacy, even in this cordial atmosphere and one that is sanctified by the trappings of transition, is up for grabs. And that is a reality we should not forget about.
You're right, Major. Can we just say the things that you pointed out in the presidential letters are the exact same passages that we picked as well? I think that that's very interesting. We're all sort of thinking alike. You're right. It has been an adversarial relationship, but that seems to be changing today. Major, thank you. We'll get back to you in just a second. Nancy Cordes, who is on the west front of the Capitol. Nancy?
Gail, as members of the House of Representatives begin to stream in, it is interesting to note that the man who led them not that long ago, former House Speaker John Boehner of Ohio, is here as well, greeting them, a man who was forced out, frankly, by the same political forces that ushered in the presidency of Donald J. Trump. His own party, members on the right who felt that he was insufficiently conservative and that Washington needed to be shaken up. Well, that is certainly going to happen now, and his successor, Paul Ryan, is trying to navigate those same tricky waters now that he is holding the job. Another person who will be here shortly, who probably would rather be anywhere else today, frankly, is Hillary Clinton. She's, of course, as the wife of a former president, expected to be here, and her absence would be notable, so she will be here as her opponent is sworn in. She's been keeping a very low profile. Her former aides tell me that she didn't want to do anything that would take attention away from the president-to-be, and we don't know that much, frankly, about what she wants to do next. Even those close to her say that they're waiting to see what her next chapter will be. They expect that it will be something notable, perhaps with the Clinton Foundation, but they're watching just like the rest of us.
Is she attending the Women's March tomorrow? Do you know, Nancy?
We don't know. I think that would be unlikely because it would be seen perhaps as a slap in the face of the man who has just become president. That's why some other Democrats have told me that they don't plan to attend, but certainly there are many more who will be on the Mall tomorrow to make their feelings known. And so, it's possible we'll see her, but we haven't gotten an indication yet.
Yeah, you know that some people would like her to run for mayor of New York, although she has said her representative said it's not going to happen. I assume that lots of universities would like to have her as their president, so she can have a very busy life, and she has 2 new grandchildren.
Yeah, but a lot of people would like to see her sitting on a board, too. But we're sitting here waiting for President Obama and President-elect Trump to leave the White House. You know, they were supposed to leave at 10:30. Right now it's 10:32. But pretty much it's been running on schedule. They've been a couple minutes late throughout the day, but they're running pretty much on schedule.
It's not as bad as you are.
Yeah, I know. So I've been told.
You're always on time.
Thank you for pointing that out, Charlie.
Charlie, what time did you get here this morning, mister? We were here early.
This is a moment of national unity. Let's not have this bickering.
I mean,
Nora, I wasn't going to bring that up.
I know, but I did for you, so thank you.
Charlie drinking a little glass of Haterade this morning on this day.
Yeah. Anyway.
No, it's all good fun.
You only tell people you love that.
Yes, I actually do.
So again, this is the North Portico of the White House.
Waiting for the president.
Yes, and means they're having a good time in there. But they do have to get to the the West Front before 12. Before 12. That is constitutionally
more than 200-year-old
dictated.
deadlines.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Or we'll be with that.
That will happen.
Barack Obama is president until he takes the oath of office, until the president-elect takes the oath of office, right?
Yeah, and but I mean, he is the president, but there's all he does is sit there and wait for the oath.
I want to speak to this idea. Donald Trump has referenced this often. It is the idea that he is leader of a movement.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all presidents say that because you want to make it look like you are elevated on the shoulders of the people. But there was a movement behind Donald Trump. There is no question, and it is an intense movement. But the size of that movement is not all that's required now. He's president of the whole country.
Yeah.
As we
but
watch,
it was big enough to get him elected.
Yeah, sure.
As we watch, of course, and waiting to see President Obama and President-elect Trump, we should note we're here on the Mall, and you can see now hundreds and thousands of people starting to stream onto the mall.
It's almost like they opened a gate or something.
It's like they did. It's like they just opened the gate, knowing that we are approaching this moment. This incredible moment when Donald Trump will take the oath of office, and with 35 words that are the only words in the Constitution, I'm told, that have quotes around them. He will say those words, which are delivered. The oath is delivered by the Chief Justice, John Roberts.
Who's had some experience in this?
That's right, his third time doing this. You and I have been reading the same research, I guess.
We are well prepared.
This is an incredible moment, and that's why people not just only watch it on TV, but also come here and want to see it in person.
Yeah.
And the mall becomes full. This beautiful architecture here in Washington, D.C. is filled with people.
There's a lot of talk about the norms that Donald Trump has broken during the campaign. He broke so many of them. Which ones is he going to break in the presidency? The norms exist, and this is more than a norm. It's in the Constitution, so it's a law. Well, it's not a law, but you have to abide by it. But all the ceremony we're watching today, all of the things that both sides are doing, are the traditions that kind of act as a shoehorn to get the new president in line with an existing American story. And that's why we have norms. It's because it keeps us from being at each other's throats. And so on a day where so many are being observed, still the question is how many of the other kinds of norms will be observed going forward in this new presidency, which promises to be very, very active. Because a lot of the people that brought Donald Trump here, that Charlie was talking about, that movement, they believe the traditions and norms of Washington are there for the establishment.
But you know what's also...
And the elites, yeah.
It's also interesting, yesterday, John, I was out walking around, and there were a lot of Democrats in the crowd who said, I might not have voted for him, but I do respect the office of the presidency, and I respect what's happening in our country. And I think it's interesting to make that observation, that there are some people there as well.
And they also would like to see change. I mean, a lot of people would like to see change. They need to find their own change.
Sure.
But a change from gridlock is a good thing for the country.
Right.
Yes, I mean, I think there would be some people who would say, unless the change goes in a direction that I don't want, and that's certainly what people felt with Barack Obama when his supporters said change, and they were all excited about it. There was a portion of the country that said, no, we're scared of change. Now that's reversed.
Bernie Sanders just arriving at the Capitol.
Yeah. On the west front of the Capitol, they build a platform for all of the VIPs and dignitaries. It's about 1,000 people that are on this platform of the west front of the Capitol. And that's where we get to, from where we are, we can see the west front here from the Washington Mall. It used to be they would do the inaugurations on the east front of the Capitol. That's now where the arrivals take place, where we just saw...
Now, do we know whether this president will be speaking from teleprompters? The president-elect?
I believe so.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And he will be holding 2 Bibles. He will take the oath on 2 Bibles. It was not only the Bible of President Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln. It's called the Lincoln Bible, I should say, rather. Yeah, it's called the Lincoln Bible. And also one from his childhood.
One from his childhood as well. And then he's promised a short speech, which is his first act of bipartisanship, because I think everybody can get behind a short speech.
And short is defined as about 20 minutes?
20 minutes, yeah. That's what we've been told. Of course, he's a famous ad-libber, so...
Can you imagine the ad-libbing of an inaugural address?
Yeah, well, that's a norm that might be interesting to break.
But the people who've seen it say that it will be concise and that it will be unifying.
And a bit aspirational.
Yes.
And also, we know he's going to talk about America first. They've said that. Yeah. His central theme of his campaign.
And then begins the hard part.
And then becomes the hard part. Like governing. So everybody's anticipating the same picture, anticipating when the president-elect and the president will walk out that door and get in a car and ride down Pennsylvania Avenue. We all would love to know what they'll say to each other, although we know they have been talking to each other and they've gotten to know each other. And
this is the most extraordinary rental handover in history. You know, the rental property of the White House going from one occupant to the other.
And there, of course, is the Chief Justice Roberts, as well as Clarence Thomas, who will deliver the oath to the Vice President, and that will be a first for him. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, of course, and Justice Alito, Justice Sotomayor,
Sonia Sotomayor.
Justice Kagan. It appears
that
all 8 justices are here today. Of course, there are only 8 justices on the Supreme Court, and that will be one of the first acts by by the then President Trump will be, and we're told by advisors, this may come in the first 2 weeks of his presidency.
That's right. Is to add a member to that line,
Right.
and you know, we're talking about the symbols and the unity and all of that. That can disappear quickly in a fight over the Supreme Court, not because of who Donald Trump picks, but because so many hot button issues go through the Supreme Court, and it's obviously the control of the court itself is up for grabs in the pick.
We just saw Senator Cory Booker, who many of his colleagues decided they would not attend. I saw him doing an interview recently saying that's their decision, but he had every intention
and
to be
he
here
is one of the
today.
people think might begin to try to think about running for president in 2020.
Yes, I've heard that too. You know, it's interesting. They were supposed to come out at 10:30. It's now 10:39. Remember the first meeting, guys, 2 days after the election. That meeting was supposed to last 20 minutes, and it went over an hour. That, of course, is not going to happen today. But do we take this as a good sign?
Well, there we see. Looks like some have left. There's the Senator Schumer, Senator Blunt, leaving the White House there.
And Trent Lott, former Senate Majority Leader there.
Exactly.
You can pan and move the camera anywhere you want to look. This is 360 video.
Have their own sort of silent protest going on even as they attend the transfer of power.
I mean, this is an awesome gathering of power in our nation's capital. The Supreme Court, Congress, cabinet members past and present.
There's Jared Kushner,
the very powerful
Trump.
son-in-law of the president-elect.
And their
Jared
eldest
Kushner, daughter.
That is Lara. That's Lara Trump and Vanessa Trump.
I don't see
Ivanka
Ivanka Trump in that picture. I just see Jared.
I wonder if we don't have this, whether Ivanka stayed behind at the White House with her father. She also has young children that have come here. Many members of the family, too, want to be there as well on the West Front to witness this. And the incoming chief of staff to the White House, Reince Priebus, who is 44 years old, young for a White House chief of staff. He'll need that youth and vigor because it is a demanding job.
It's a demanding job.
Yes.
His hair, too, will turn white if he's there 8 years.
And as you were talking about earlier with Andy Card, the number of people who have walk-in privileges to the president, this is a huge deal. The number of people, Jared Kushner is one, Ivanka Trump is another,
Kellyanne
Steve
Conway
Bannon, Kellyanne Conway, and Reince Priebus will all be there with advice and consent, and Donald Trump is the kind of person who seeks a lot of opinions, and that's great, except for the fact that there is so much on his plate during a day. You don't have time to seek the opinions. There's a story, Barack Obama in 2009 said to President Bush, I want to call on you. And President Bush said, call me anytime. But you're going to be getting so much advice, you're not going to want another piece of advice, even from an ex-president.
And in fact, what Andy Card said to us earlier today is the most important thing that a chief of staff can do is maintain space inside the president's head for him to think about issues and not be clouded by too many things.
That's right. But then you've had those presidents in the past, and I'm not suggesting anything about President Trump, but the presidents in the past who don't like to be alone because they are weighed down by all of the things they have to think about. And what happens is you get a president who seeks affirmation in opinion, and that's where White House starts to unravel because it lacks a discipline. And that's why you've heard Barack Obama talk so much, as previous presidents have, about the necessity of that discipline.
Right. We are now just about 15 minutes behind schedule, which means the coffee and tea between Trump and Obama is going well.
Yes.
Scott Pelley and Bob Schieffer are also joining us. Scott?
Bob Schieffer, you were reminding us that that Dwight Eisenhower refused into the White House to meet with Harry Truman. Now we're 15 minutes behind schedule. As Nora said, things must be going well over coffee.
Well, they went back for seconds. I mean, they like the sweets. But I do think that is a good thing. And it does show that, you know, as President and Mrs. Bush said, and I think I said earlier today, they developed, there's President Carter and Rosalind Carter just coming in. They said that the beginning of the warm friendship that they developed with the Obamas began on that day when they all were there together at the Capitol and then rode up to Capitol Hill. But every transition, that ride is sometimes different all the way back from the very beginning. But
there's Chief Justice John Roberts, who will be administering the oath of office to the president. And as we watch the Supreme Court members file in, we also see the door behind which the president, the first lady, the president-elect, and Mrs. Trump are still apparently chatting. Maybe President Obama had a great deal of advice to give to
maybe
Mr. Trump.
Already they may be exchanging advice. And, you know, Nora, I heard you say that this will be that the Chief Justice has given the oath 3 times. Fact is, he's actually given it 4 times because when he gave it at the official ceremony, he misstated it at one point, and so he sort of sneaked back to the White House the next day, and just to make sure everything was perfect, gave the oath again to President Obama.
That was in the first inauguration.
That's right,
the
Bob.
Chief Justice of the United States had made 2 mistakes, just misplaced a couple of words, and it wasn't really believed necessary at the time, but just to make absolutely sure with the first African American president of the United States the next day, privately in a small ceremony, Mr. Obama was administered the oath with all of the words in the right order, just to make absolutely sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
And I think
that's what you call, Scott, crossing every T and dotting every I. They wanted to make sure that
here the
was
doors are
absolutely
opening now.
perfect.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. And
okay, that's Dr. Jill Biden
and Karen
Pence coming out first.
And they will ride together. It should be noted, too, they both have sons who served in the military. And so they both have a special affinity and understanding of the service and sacrifice.
I think.
We've not heard the cause that Mrs. Pence may take up as the vice president's wife, but no doubt it will be a continuation of service and honoring our men and women who serve.
Have we found out yet what the gift was that Mrs. Trump gave
that
to
Tiffany
Mrs.
box.
Obama?
No.
We do assume it was a Tiffany box, but we don't know what's in it.
Yes.
It may have been an autographed picture of Donald Trump in a Tiffany box.
Well, maybe they just wanted to do something for Tiffany because with Tiffany so close to Trump Tower, it's so hard to get in and out of there. They probably could use a little help right now. Here they come.
And now we have the first ladies, Melania Trump and Michelle Obama. Both of them fashion icons.
Yes, I was going to say both of them looking absolutely lovely
And we know
today.
who did this dress for the
Yes,
we
Ralph
know that
Lauren.
Melania
First
Trump
lady.
is Ralph Lauren.
That stunning blue and channeling Jackie Onassis.
We haven't heard about Michelle Obama's outfit yet.
Yeah.
Have you, Nora? Have you heard?
I have not. I have not. And
John, do you know?
Yeah.
No, I was racking my brain for what Donald Trump is wearing.
Yeah.
probably a Donald Trump tie, no less, a long time. But this is, we should know, this is an important moment.
Yes.
What's the consensus of the group here? Do we think that Michelle Obama may somehow get into politics? I think it's an open question.
I think Gail knows her better than
I don't
anybody.
even think that's an open question. If I had to vote, and from what I've been hearing, I would say no. This is Vice President Joe Biden, of course, and Vice President-elect Mike Pence getting in the car.
This is
their trip to the Capitol.
And this will likely be one of the last times that President Obama is in the White House, a place that has been his residence for 8 years. He said goodbye to the resident staff, which we heard from Chief of Staff can be very emotional. There are times that a president returns, but the last time as president.
Well, that's right. I mean, the symbols are everywhere.
Yeah.
The Marines we see there will have a new commander-in-chief in an hour. Barack Obama will sleep in a new bed for the first time tonight. Donald Trump will have a new room that he wakes up to. I mean, two of the biggest things in life are changing jobs and changing residences, and they're doing it all in one moment.
About tea times.
The Marine Guards are now
Eric Trump
standing
told me
at
that the whole
salute,
Trump family is going to
anticipating
spend the
the
night tonight at the White House together
and
as a
here
family.
comes the President of the United States
We're
and the
looking forward to that.
President-elect.
Here they come.
And now
it's a very powerful picture to see the two of them get into the beast together.
I mean, this is democracy in action here.
It really is, Charlie.
The final hour of a time in which there's a peaceful transition of power from a Democrat to a Republican.
This is
from a man who had served for 8 years to a man who's never held political office.
The two of them will drive up Pennsylvania Avenue to the United States Capitol, to the East Front. But this is also an opportunity for them to have a discussion inside the presidential limo, which is known as the Beast. And just so you know, it's made of military-grade armor. The doors are so heavy that even if the president wanted to open them himself, it is said that they can't. It's so heavy, the door, to open that door. It is
But regardless of how you feel about this campaign and these two candidates, because it was so acrimonious, it really does give you goosebumps on both sides to see the two of them get in the car together, very cordial after spending the time they've spent this morning to go to make the final transfer of power. I think it's a very important moment for all of us to see, and it's so civilized. It's so civilized.
Scott?
You know, it was not always this civilized.
Yes.
Ulysses S. Grant declined to give Andrew Johnson the ride to the Capitol, and so Johnson declined to attend the inauguration. But that was the last president to boycott the inauguration.
You know, another thing to think about to sort of underline what this ceremony means. Think about it. When they get to Capitol Hill, up there on the podium with them will be former President Clinton, former President Bush, former President Carter, and soon to be former President Obama. Yeah. So you will have 4 of the 5 living ex-presidents, none of whom voted for Donald Trump. But they're here to underline that this is not about who you're for or who you're against. They're there to honor this tradition of a smooth transition.
And Donald Trump enters the most exclusive club in the world, you know, presidents and former presidents. And the interesting thing is that, you know, you're looking at the politics past and the politics future, all there on that stage.
Notice how slowly the motorcade moves and everyone is in salute. They're along what is just outside the White House, that closed street now, Pennsylvania Avenue, which
and
2 decades ago was open to the public and to traffic and is now closed for security.
Saluting that commander-in-chief.
And as we've been pointing out, this is the only time that they will be alone. You know, all morning long they've been with other people. The only time they'll be alone, Margaret Brennan is there at 15th and Pennsylvania as a motorcade drives by. Margaret, what can you tell us?
Gail, well, Donald Trump and Barack Obama just drove past us here at 15th and Pennsylvania, passing by the Treasury Department, a fleet of Suburbans, armored vehicles, policemen escorting them. We are surrounded by snipers on all of the buildings here, protecting this stream of some of the most powerful men to be and currently up to the Capitol, along with the First Ladies and the Vice President-elect's wife, along with Jill Biden, all streaming past us here. This corner will likely be packed later today once we see that handoff of power and watch the crowds cheer them on to return to the White House. Right now, we are seeing some people here. Everyone's got their iPhone out. Everyone is filming that glimpse of the president's to-be and the president that currently is, along with all the emergency vehicles streaming after them. We see a lot of American flags, a lot of patriotic outfits here, and loads of security here, all watching this motorcade as it passes for that very short drive up to the Capitol. And you can see the last of the vehicles passing us just now.
And again, a salute to the current commander-in-chief and the future commander-in-chief, as Donald J. Trump will be sworn in the next hour as the 45th president of the United States. He will take that 35-word oath that says that he solemnly swears to protect and to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. You might be able to hear the bagpipes playing behind us here on the Mall. And there's Jimmy Carter and Rosalind Carter. As Bob Schieffer was mentioning, we have almost every living president here, except, of course, for the 41st
Good
president.
to see Jimmy Carter, because he had a bout with cancer, and he's 90 years old.
He's also 90 years old and in good health, and he says his cancer was cured. Andy Card, the former White House chief of staff to George W. Bush, says that George H.W. Bush, who he also served in a different capacity, said he's on the upswing, and that Barbara Bush is on the upswing.
And
they
Jimmy
wanted
Carter
to be
is
here.
92 years old, guys. Look at him. Considering he gave everybody quite a scare recently.
I wanted to
He's
note
fine.
that when Donald Trump does take the oath of office, he will place his hand on his childhood Bible that he's owned for more than 60 years. His mother, Mary Ann, gave it to him. And while Donald Trump, I think, is not known as a particularly religious man, he still has his childhood Bible. He will use that as well as the Lincoln Bible. 156 years later, that Bible that Lincoln used will be used again today. It was a Bible that President Obama used in both of his inaugurals.
All right, Nancy Cordes, the VIPs are all settling in. We just saw the Carters arrive. What can you tell us from your vantage point at the Capitol?
Well, I can tell you, Gail, that this is a pretty unusual and uncertain moment in time for members of Congress as they await the president-elect, not just for Democrats, but for Republicans as well, who will tell you in candid moments that they really aren't quite sure what to expect. Mr. Trump, for most of them, frankly, was not their first choice, not their second choice, not their third choice. I just saw Governor John Kasich a few moments ago, who at one point called Donald Trump the Prince of Darkness. And so they are going to have to figure out how to navigate their new relationship with Donald Trump. They're certainly thrilled that a Republican was elected, but some of his ways are unfamiliar to them, and it's an uneasy relationship right now.
President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State and former First Lady Hillary Clinton.
United States Senator.
This has to be a very bittersweet moment for her because she, of course, like many people, thought she would be the one taking the oath of office
and
today.
won the popular vote.
Yes, and won the popular vote. And there's former President Bill Clinton. But both of them said they wanted to be here today. I think that's an important point.
And since now tweets are news, Hillary Clinton has also tweeted today.
Okay, what'd she say?
Saying, "I'm here today to honor our democracy, its enduring values. I will never stop believing in our country and its future."
All right. Scott Pelley and Bob Dickerson, you're watching the same thing that we are. What do you... Scott Pelley and because John Dickerson is here. Scott Pelley and Bob Schieffer. Sorry about that.
We're
Bob
all
Schieffer.
the same.
You're watching the same. Yes, you're all the same.
Pretty interchangeable.
All so you can get the big picture.
Welcome back to Inauguration 2017 Worldwide here on RT.
Welcome back to our coverage on RT America. I'm Ed Schultz along with Anya Parnpel, and we are joined at this hour for more of our coverage with the legend, the icon, longtime broadcaster Larry King, and longtime friend and associate of Donald Trump.
Know him well. It's good to be with you.
It's
what
good.
A great looking set.
It's good to have you
RT
here.
in Washington looks terrific. And it's a perfect day for an inaugural. It's not very cold. It's a nip in the air. There's clouds. There should be clouds.
Larry,
There's a double meaning to it.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of Americans out there wondering, what's Donald Trump really like? Is he what the media purports him to be? You have known this man for decades.
I've known him a lot. I go back, Donald Trump, to the late 70s. 1978, I believe, when I first met him when I was doing my national radio show and then subsequently on television, CNN. He's certainly unusual. He has an enormous ego. I mean, it's an ego that's such an ego that it becomes a caricature of itself. Mm-hmm. The joke is, Melania said the other day that, God, it's cold, and he said, you can call me Donald. But he has this, he has a flair. He certainly knew what he wanted in business. He's been erratic politically as opinions here. The Donald Trump of 10 years ago was very liberal. He wanted a single-payer health system, was pro-choice, supported Hillary Clinton's senatorial campaign in New York.
Kind of a political drifter.
Yeah, but he jumped into he found a niche here, and he jumped into it very smartly. And while he ran to what the pundits might say was an erratic campaign, those people he touched didn't see it that way. And when he made that statement, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and still win the vote, told you a lot.
You've also known Hillary Clinton for a long time. This has
almost
to be
just as long.
Yeah, this has to be a very hard day for her. And it's been a rough couple of months, a shocking defeat, so to speak.
Absolutely. But I think she's been handling it very well. Look at her there. She looks very graceful. And President Bush behind her. You know, the Bushes and the Clintons have gotten very close. The father, who we all wish the best, and there's that hospital up in...
And he was probably one of the most qualified men ever to take the Oval Office, George H.W.
To go and take their positions where President Obama will turn over those reins of power and President-elect Trump will become president.
You know, Scott, the inaugurations up until Ronald Reagan came to town were held on this side of the Capitol. And Ronald Reagan being an old movie actor and his aide, Mike Deaver, they came up to sort of scope things out as they were getting ready for the inauguration, and they said, well, wait a minute, the good picture is on the other side of the Capitol, on the west side of the Capitol, and for that reason, they decided to start holding it on the west side of the Capitol, and since Reagan, that's where it's been, and it is a much better picture. It's a magnificent picture because you can look all the way down the mall to the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial. Here you have the president-elect and the president for a few more minutes, Barack Obama, making their way now up to the stands.
Ladies and gentlemen, the children of Vice President-elect Pence and Secretary.
Thank you, sir. Good to be back. Hello. Hello, everybody.
Are you going to reverse the immigration order in the next few days?
Congratulations, sir.
That's right.
Okay, Laura, we're moving.
And there, of course, we just saw President Obama, the 44th president, enter with the soon-to-be 45th president of the United States, Donald Trump, with the congressional leadership of both the House and Senate. They will be announced along with their families on the west front of the Capitol, so we will see that shortly. One piece of information to pass on: the end of the Obama era in the White House was marked by Valerie Jarrett turning off the lights, it is said. And so now begins what is called organized chaos at the White House, yes, where they're doing everything from removing the president's, Obama's, and Mrs. Obama's personal stuff to replace by the Trumps. And here is Ivanka Trump, the second oldest child of Donald Trump and Ivana Trump.
Walking next to her brother, Don Jr., and there's Eric Trump and Tiffany Trump, and there's Barron bringing up the rear. Melania and Donald Trump's 10-year-old son.
Donald Trump has been very close to his family, as we all know.
Yes.
Especially as they're adult children. He's become very close with them, and they work with him. The two oldest sons will, and you just spoke with Eric Trump recently.
Interesting, Eric Trump, when I said, what's your biggest fear for your dad? He said, bringing new people in. We've been a very insular family. Wow. We trust each other. And he said that's been part of the hardest thing for them all to get used to.
John Dickerson?
You know, there is such a weight on their father now, yes, and they are his support system and have been in that tight-knitness. And I was reminded of FDR after he beat Herbert Hoover. He said to his son, he said, I'm just afraid that I may not have the strength to do this job. After you leave me tonight, Jimmy, I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray to God that he will help me, that he will give me the strength and the guidance to do this job and do it right, and I hope that you will pray for me too. A father leaning on his son at that moment in 1932, and this is a moment for a family, not just for a new president.
And I think that Donald Trump as president will lean on his family, in particular his daughter,
yes,
Ivanka Trump, who has left her business in New York so that she can help her husband. The son-in-law of Donald Trump has been named a senior advisor.
Also has a very key position. And they will all admit, too, Nora, that Ivanka Trump, they believe, is the favorite, which is unusual when you hear children say that about the favorite child.
Well, and when you ask people who've been on this journey with Donald Trump in the campaign, who can make him change his mind?
It is Ivanka.
She's the one they named.
Let's listen now as they announce the children.
Laura Dove and the House of Representatives Chief Administrative Officer Philip G. Kiko.
note, Barron Trump and his mother, Melania Trump, will not immediately move to the White House because he's finished school. But when he does, he will be the first son to live in the White House since JFK Jr.
And that's been more than 50 years to have a boy of that age.
Yes, inside the White House. Because, of course, George W. Bush had 2 daughters. Barack Obama had 2 daughters.
As we watch this, you wonder what are the thoughts of Donald J. Trump and Barack Obama.
Well, what they are looking at from their vantage point is the entire Washington Mall, which is about half full with supporters. There are estimates it could be anywhere from 800,000 to 1 million. About half the size is Barack Obama's. But look at this crowd. This is what they see right now. A sea of people who supported Donald Trump throughout this extraordinary campaign and are here to witness this peaceful transition of power.
What we will see once everybody is there is we will see opening ceremonies. Then the Associate Justice Clarence Thomas will administer the vice presidential oath to Mike Pence, and then the Chief Justice will step forward to administer the presidential oath to Donald Trump. That oath must be administered before 12 noon. Before 12 noon. And they're a little behind in coming from the White House, so they will make sure that that happens before 12.
John, should we talk about this inaugural address? I mean, he's going to be taking the oath of office on the Lincoln Bible. President Lincoln, of course, appealed to our better angels.
Sure.
What does Trump need to do?
Well, I think it seems to me the key hurdle is not just to say the word unity, but to make people feel it. That's the key with any piece of rhetoric. And that doesn't mean that the day after the speech everything won't change, because he's going to start doing things, and that's going to create either unity or division, and actions are more powerful than words. But as we've been talking about, this is a moment where he has a lot of tools that are given to him by the ceremony and the traditions of America and all of those ex-presidents who are up there with him and who, as Bob pointed out, didn't vote for him, and the history and all that he's got available to him offer him a great opportunity in this speech to create something special, and it is a moment, and those moments do last, and they set the tone, and we'll get a sense today for his sense of history, for his sense of his place in history, for his sense of how his movement fits in with a country where there is a movement on the other side of him. All those questions will be answered.
Well, Susan Page told us earlier today that he has to deliver a spectacular address, that was her word, and that from election night, he hasn't said anything that has been unifying to the country.
There has been, in Donald Trump, there has been 2 Trumps. The Donald Trump of his kind of intense Trump that we all know, and then the other at times who, like election night. But as she pointed out, there really haven't been the symbols of reaching out since that speech. And, that's the test of his presidency.
Deeds count, but small gestures can make a difference.
Yes.
And you were looking at, the beginning of the definition of the Trump presidency.
That's exactly right. These are the first steps. And, just like your mom taught you about the first day in school, first impressions do matter. And now Donald Trump has made a lot of impressions, obviously, over the course of a campaign.
Oh, shouting USA, USA.
Let's listen. Of Mrs. Obama and Dr. Biden, and then Mrs. Trump and Mrs. Pence, and then President Obama and Vice President Biden, and then our 45th president and his vice president will be announced.
Interesting to see Ohio Governor John Kasich sitting in the audience today.
That's right. Scott Pelley and Bob Schieffer are also with us. Scott?
Nora, we've got about 45 minutes to go, a little bit over 45 minutes to go, as prescribed by the 20th Amendment to the Constitution, which says that the oath must be administered by noon on January the 20th. Only part of what we're seeing today that is written into the Constitution is the President's 35-word oath. All the rest is traditional and also governed by the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. Bob Schieffer, as we were looking at some of the pictures of the National Mall, 45 minutes away from the inauguration, the crowd is, by historic standards, a little bit thin.
Yes, it is. It's an enormous crowd. I mean, these things draw an enormous number of people, but compared to, say, the Obama inauguration, this is probably a third, I would say, the size of the crowd that showed up. But that was the largest crowd in the history of Washington, the largest number of people to descend on the city at one time. But as you can see, those look like ice skating arenas. They're actually, what they have done is they've laid down this kind of a carpet of white plastic there to protect the grass on the mall. And as you can see, it's far from being filled in, but it's still a good-sized crowd.
I'm going to bet that high-angle shot we just looked at was from the Washington Monument. And in previous administrations, previous inaugurations, you've seen that entire area there completely filled up. Certainly in Mr. Obama's first inauguration, which was tremendously historic for the obvious reasons. It's been estimated that the crowd was well over 1 million. Here comes the former first lady for another 45 minutes, and Dr. Jill Biden.
You know, the Obamas, of course, they're going to fly away in the helicopter when this is over and go, I think, somewhere in Florida. But then they'll be coming, Palm Springs, I think it is, and then they'll be coming back to Washington. They're going to live just down the street from the White House in the Kalorama area, just off Massachusetts Avenue. Very nice neighborhood. I used to live there. But then my kids grew up and my wife got tired of mowing the lawn, and so...
And of course, they will be there as their daughters remain in school.
Yeah.
President Obama said in his last news conference a few days ago that he was not going to run for office again. His name wouldn't be on any ballot, but he promised to be part of the national debate on those issues that he holds dear, including things that he said, including things like immigration and social justice and reform of the criminal justice system.
But I think he'll be quiet for a while. He said that. He said, I just want to be quiet for a while. There's Rick Perry.
Former governor of Texas, now the nominee to be Energy Secretary, once called for the dismantling of the Energy Department. Yesterday before Congress, he apologized for that. He said he'd learned so much about the work that the Energy Department does that he figures that it would be worth keeping around. Of course, Bernie Sanders, the insurgent candidate on the Democratic side, who gave Hillary Clinton such a run for her money.
Ladies and gentlemen, the First Lady, Mrs. Michelle Obama, and the wife of the Vice President, Dr. Jill Biden, escorted by the Democratic Staff Director of the United States Senate Committee on Rules and Administration, Kelly Fado, Miss Irish Weinschall, and Mr. Paul Pelosi.
I think it's important to remember that the First Lady and Dr. Biden, it's an unpaid position, and they give up their lives in many ways to do great public service. And these two have become very close friends, and they have worked so hard to bring attention to our men and women in the military.
Yeah, they've become close, as their husbands have as well. And I think that this is going to be a lifelong friendship on both sides. They have great affection for each other.
And of course, they're alongside the Clintons as they watch this moment. It's not always been easy for Mrs. Obama as First Lady. She's talked about some of the constraints, and they say they're looking forward not only to sleeping in, but also just going to the grocery store.
No, I've heard her say, I'll be excited just to be able to roll my window down.
Yes.
Without people getting alarmed at that.
Yeah. So they will be leaving Washington in about an hour. It won't be Marine One, because when you're on the helicopter, it's called Executive One, but they will take off to Andrews Air Force Base and then fly a plane that's formally the same as Air Force One, but it's not called Air Force One when he's not on it, to go to take a vacation.
Yeah, heading to Palm Springs, California. They said they both need some downtime. Be interesting to see who's going to be on the plane with them when they take off today.
And if they follow tradition, they'll meet with staff at Andrews as they leave the helicopter and go to the plane taking them to Palm Springs.
Up next, we are awaiting Mrs. Trump and Mrs. Pence to be announced, the future First Lady. Let's listen. Leadership. Mrs. Blunt, Elaine Chao, Paul Ryan's wife.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Melania Trump and Mrs. Karen Pence, escorted by the Secretary of the Senate, Julie Adams, the Clerk of the House of Representatives, Karen Haas, Mrs. Abigail Blunt, Mrs. Jana Ryan, the Honorable Elaine L. Chao, and Mrs. Judy McCarthy.
Well, there is the president and the vice president coming in. Ahead of them, the Speaker of the House and the Democratic minority leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, all in anticipation of this magical moment of the transfer of power, waiting for the president-elect to come forward to, obviously, the great joy of so many people in the audience who've come here, who supported him, and now come to see him and his team take power.
And as President Obama gets on former Marine One to fly to Andrews Air Force Base, Joe Biden is getting on the Amtrak to go home to Delaware.
Going home to Delaware.
Which he did every day of his life as a senator.
That's right. And he says he's going to have a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
That's how he will. That's
Sounds
good old
like a
Joe,
good
regular
plan.
Joe.
Leaving just like he came.
Let's listen.
On the screen, guys.
Back up.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Barack H. Obama, and the Vice President Joseph R. Biden, escorted by Senate Democratic Secretary Gary Myrick, Senate Democratic Leader and Rules Committee Ranking Member Charles E. Schumer, and House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi.
There he is, President Obama, shaking hands with the Trump family as they await their father.
When President-elect Trump is announced, that will then officially begin the ceremony.
President Bush and President Trump exchanging greetings. Bush smiling. President Carter
There's
looking
President Carter. First Lady going back to greet him. It's nice.
So much history. So much
all on
history.
that stage, yes.
Are we done? Are we done?
President-elect. There we see the President-elect as he comes forward to be greeted by a crowd that's already beginning to say Trump, Trump, Trump. Behind Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, and Kevin McCarthy.
What must he be thinking, John, at this moment as he's walking down? You see a sea of humanity waiting for you, and you hear the calls, as Charlie pointed out, of Trump, Trump, Trump. This is his moment right now.
Yeah, I can't imagine what he's thinking, but it is a solitary job, and
Yes.
while he is walking in a group, he's all alone. That's
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect, Michael Richard Pence. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President-elect, the Staff Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Stacey McHatton McBride, the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, Frank Larkin, the House Sergeant-at-Arms, Paul Irving, the Chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Roy Blunt, Rules Committee Ranking Member and Senate Democratic Leader Charles E. Schumer, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Paul D. Ryan, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, and House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi. Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, Donald John Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee for Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Roy Blunt.
Thank you all. If you have a seat, you can sit down. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Mr. President-elect, Mr. Vice President-elect, Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States of America. Today, the legislative, the executive, the judicial branches of our constitutional government come together for the 58th inauguration of the President of the United States. Millions of people all over the world will watch and will listen to this event. 36 years ago at his first inauguration, it was also the first inauguration on this side of the Capitol, President Ronald Reagan said that what we do here is both commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace every 4 years since 1789, when President George Washington took this exact same oath. Miraculous because we've done it every 4 years since 1789, and the example it sets for democracies everywhere. Washington believed the inauguration of the second president would be more important than the inauguration of the first. Many people had taken control of a government up until then, but few people had ever turned that control willingly over to anyone else. And as important as the transfer of the first transfer of power was, many historians believe that the next election was even more important. When in 1801, one group of people, arguably for the first time ever in history, willingly, if not enthusiastically, gave control of the government to people they believed had a dramatically different view of what the government would, should, and could do. After that election that actually discovered a flaw in the Constitution itself, which was remedied by the 12th Amendment, Thomas Jefferson, at that inauguration, beyond the chaos of the election that had just passed, said, "We are all Republicans, we are all Federalists." After 4 years of civil war, Lincoln's second inaugural speech tried to find reason for the continued war when he pointed out that both sides prayed to the same God. He'd earlier written about those fervent prayers that one side must be and both sides may be wrong. But in 1865, he looked to the future, and the memorable moment in that speech was "with malice toward none and charity for all." In the middle of the Depression, the country was told that the only thing we had to fear was fear itself. And President Kennedy talked about the obligation in democracy to country. The great question that day was, ask what you can do for your country. So we come to this place again, commonplace and miraculous, a national moment of celebration, but not a celebration of victory, a celebration of democracy. And as we begin that celebration, I call on His Eminence Timothy Michael Cardinal Dolan, Reverend Dr. Samuel Rodriguez, and Pastor Paula White Kane to provide readings and the invocation.
The prayer of King Solomon from the Book of Wisdom. Let us pray. God of our ancestors and Lord of mercy, you have made all things, and in your providence have charged us to rule the creatures produced by you, to govern the world in holiness and righteousness, and to render judgment with integrity of heart. Give us wisdom, for we are your servants, weak and short-lived, lacking in comprehension of judgment and of laws. Indeed, though one might be perfect among mortals, if wisdom which comes from you be lacking, we count for nothing. Now with you is wisdom, who knows your will and was there when you made the world, who understands what is pleasing in your eyes, what is conformable with your commands. Send her forth from your holy heavens, from your glorious throne dispatch her, that she may be with us and work with us, that we may grasp what is pleasing to you. For she knows and understands all things, and will guide us prudently in our affairs, and safeguard us by her glory. Amen.
From the Gospel of Matthew, the 5th chapter. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. He blesses those who are pure in heart, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. For you are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on its stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. Respectfully, in Jesus' name.
We come to you, Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, with grateful hearts, thanking you for this great country that you have decreed to your people. We acknowledge we are a blessed nation with a rich history of faith and fortitude, with a future that is filled with promise and purpose. We recognize that every good and every perfect gift comes from you, and the United States of America is your gift, for which we proclaim our gratitude. As a nation, we now pray for our President, Donald John Trump, Vice President Michael Richard Pence, and their families. We ask that you would bestow upon our President the wisdom necessary to lead this great nation, the grace to unify us, and the strength to stand for what is honorable and right in your sight. In Proverbs 21:1, you instruct us that our leader's heart is in your hands. Gracious God, reveal unto our President the ability to know the will, your will, the confidence to lead us in justice and righteousness, and the compassion to yield to our better angels. While we know there are many challenges before us, in every generation you have provided the strength and power to become that blessed nation. Guide us in discernment, Lord, and give us that strength to persevere and thrive. Now bind and heal our wounds and divisions, and join our nation to your purpose. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. The psalmist declared, let your favor be upon this one nation under God. Let these United States of America be that beacon of hope to all people and nations under your dominion, a true hope for humankind. Glory to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Missouri State University Chorale.
Here are the voices of every creature. Here are the calls of every heart. Here is the place of strangers welcome. We who once walked in strangers' shoes. Once we were strangers, gleams of every being, filled with the dreams that build the day. Once we were strangers, once we were strangers, once we were strangers, now we belong, we belong. Keep faith, guard mind, take heart, guard spirit, take heart, guard spirit, take courage, keep watch, belonging.
Well, the Missouri State University Chorale practices and performs about 2 blocks from my home in Springfield, Missouri, so it was easy to find them, and we're pleased they're here. It's also a great opportunity for me to introduce my colleague, the Senator from New York, Chuck Schumer.
My fellow Americans, we live in a challenging and tumultuous time, a quickly evolving, ever more interconnected world, a rapidly changing economy that benefits too few while leaving too many behind, a fractured media, a politics frequently consumed by rancor. We face threats, foreign and domestic. In such times, faith in our government, our institutions, and even our country can erode. Despite these challenges, I stand here today confident in this great country for one reason: you, the American people. We Americans have always been a forward-looking, problem-solving, optimistic, patriotic, and decent people. Whatever our race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, whether we are immigrant or native-born, whether we live with disabilities or do not, in wealth or in poverty, we are all exceptional in our commonly held yet fierce devotion to our country, and in our willingness to sacrifice our time, energy, and even our lives to making it a more perfect union. Today we celebrate one of democracy's core attributes, the peaceful transfer of power. And every day we stand up for core democratic principles enshrined in the Constitution: the rule of law, equal protection for all under law, the freedom of speech, press, religion, the things that make America, America. And we can gain strength from reading our history and listening to the voices of average Americans. They always save us in times of strife. One such American was Major Sullivan Ballou. On July 14, 1861, when the North and South were lining up for their first battle, a time when our country was bitterly divided and faith in the future of our country was at a nadir, Major Ballou of the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers penned a letter to his wife, Sarah. It is one of the greatest letters in American history. It shows the strength and courage of the average American. Allow me to read some of his words, which echo through the ages. My very dear Sarah, he wrote, the indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. If it is necessary that I should fall on the battlefield for my country, I am ready. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how strongly American civilization now leans upon the triumph of the government, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and suffering of the Revolution. And I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me to you with the mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence can break. And yet, my love of country comes over me like a strong wind and bears me irresistibly on with all these chains to the battlefield. Sullivan Ballou gave his life on the battlefield a week later at the First Battle of Bull Run. It is because Sullivan Ballou and countless others believed in something bigger than themselves and were willing to sacrifice for it that we stand today in the full blessings of liberty in the greatest country on earth. And that spirit lives on in each of us, Americans whose families have been here for generations and those who have just arrived. And I know our best days are yet to come. I urge all Americans to read Ballou's full letter. His words give me solace, strength. I hope they will give you the same. Now, please stand while the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, administers the oath of office to the Vice President of the United States.
Place your hand on the Bible. Place your hand. The Bible. Mr. Vice President-elect, would you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Michael Richard Pence, do solemnly swear.
I, Michael Richard Pence, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I'm about to enter.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. God bless you. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to introduce the Chief Justice of the United States, John G. Roberts, Jr., who will administer the presidential oath of office. Everyone, please stand.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
What a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Did I get that one
right? Chief Justice Roberts, President Carter, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, fellow Americans, and people of the world, thank you. We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Together, we will determine the course of America and the world for many, many years to come. We will face challenges. We will confront hardships, but we will get the job done. Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. And we are grateful to President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama for their gracious aid throughout this transition. They have been magnificent. Thank you. Thank you. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. That all changes starting right here and right now, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you. It belongs to everyone gathered here today and everyone watching all across America. This is your day. This is your celebration. And this, the United States of America, is your country. What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again.
That a nation exists to serve its citizens.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. Everyone is listening to you now. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before. At the center of this movement is a crucial conviction that a nation exists to serve its citizens. Americans want great schools for their children, safe neighborhoods for their families, and good jobs for themselves. These are just and reasonable demands of righteous people and a righteous public. But for too many of our citizens, a different reality exists. Mothers and children trapped in poverty in our inner cities, rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape of our nation, an education system flush with cash, but which leaves our young and beautiful students deprived of all knowledge. And the crime, and the gangs, and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. We are one nation, and their pain is our pain. Their dreams are our dreams, and their success will be our success. We share one heart, one home, and one glorious destiny. The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans. For many decades, we've enriched foreign industry at the expense of American industry, subsidized the armies of other countries while allowing for the very sad depletion of our military. We've defended other nations' borders while refusing to defend our own. And spent trillions and trillions of dollars overseas while America's infrastructure has fallen into disrepair and decay. We've made other countries rich while the wealth, strength, and confidence of our country has dissipated over the horizon. One by one, the factories shuttered and left our shores, with not even a thought about the millions and millions of American workers that were left behind. The wealth of our middle class has been ripped from their homes and then redistributed all across the world. But that is the past, and now we are looking only to the future. We assembled here today are issuing a new decree to be heard in every city, in every foreign capital, and in every hall of power. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first. Every decision on trade, on taxes, on immigration, on foreign affairs will be made to benefit American workers and American families. We must protect our borders from the ravages of other countries making our products, stealing our companies, and destroying our jobs. Protection will lead to great prosperity and strength. I will fight for you with every breath in my body, and I will never, ever let you down. America will start winning again, winning like never before. We will bring back our jobs. We will bring back our borders. We will bring back our wealth. And we will bring back our dreams. We will build new roads and highways and bridges and airports and tunnels and railways all across our wonderful nation. We will get our people off of welfare and back to work, rebuilding our country with American hands and American labor. We will follow two simple rules: buy American and hire American. We will seek friendship and goodwill with the nations of the world, but we do so with the understanding that it is the right of all nations to put their own interests first. We do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone, but rather to let it shine as an example. We will shine for everyone to follow. We will reinforce old alliances and form new ones and unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism, which we will eradicate completely from the face of the earth. At the bedrock of our politics will be a total allegiance to the United States of America. And through our loyalty to our country, we will rediscover our loyalty to each other. When you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. The Bible tells us how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. We must speak our minds openly, debate our disagreements honestly, but always pursue solidarity. When America is united, America is totally unstoppable. There should be no fear. We are protected, and we will always be protected. We will be protected by the great men and women of our military and law enforcement. And most importantly, we will be protected by God. Finally, we must think big and dream even bigger. In America, we understand that a nation is only living as long as it is striving. We will no longer accept politicians who are all talk and no action, constantly complaining but never doing anything about it. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. We will not fail. Our country will thrive and prosper again. We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow. A new national pride will stir our souls, lift our sights, and heal our divisions. It's time to remember that old wisdom our soldiers will never forget, that whether we are black or brown or white, We all bleed the same red blood of patriots. We all enjoy the same glorious freedoms, and we all salute the same great American flag. And whether a child is born in the urban sprawl of Detroit or the windswept plains of Nebraska, they look up at the same night sky, they fill their heart with the same dreams, and they are infused with the breath of life by the same Almighty Creator. So to all Americans in every city, near and far, small and large, from mountain to mountain, from ocean to ocean, hear these words: you will never be ignored again. Your voice, your hopes, and your dreams will define our American destiny. And your courage and goodness and love will forever guide us along the way. Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you. God bless America.
This time, I call on Rabbi Marvin Heyer, Reverend Franklin Graham, and Bishop Wayne T. Jackson to provide readings and the benediction.
Eternal God, bless President Donald J. Trump and America, our great nation. Guide us to remember the words of the psalmist: who may dwell on your holy mountain, one who does what is right and speaks the truth, who knows that when you eat the labor of your hands, you are praiseworthy, that he who sows in tears shall reap in joy, because the freedoms we enjoy are not granted in perpetuity, but must be reclaimed by each generation. As our ancestors have planted for us, so we must plant for others. While it is not for us to complete the task, neither are we free to desist from them. Dispense justice for the needy and the orphan, for they have no one but their fellow citizens. And because a nation's wealth is measured by her values and not by her vaults, bless all of our allies around the world who share our beliefs. By the rivers of Babylon, we wept as we remembered Zion. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. The doer of all these shall never falter. May the days come soon when justice will dwell in the wilderness and righteousness will abide in the fertile fields, and the work of righteousness will be peace, quietness, and confidence forever. Amen.
Mr. President, in the Bible, rain is a sign of God's blessing. And it started to rain, Mr. President, when you came to the platform. And it's my prayer that God will bless you, your family, your administration, and may He bless America. The passage of Scripture comes from 1 Timothy chapter 2. I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings, for all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. This is good, and it pleases God, our Savior, who wants all people to be saved and come to a knowledge of the truth. For there is one God and one mediator between God and mankind, the man Christ Jesus, who gave himself as a ransom for all people. Now to the King eternal, immortal, invisible, the only God, be honor and glory forever and ever. In Jesus' name, amen.
We thank you, Father, for letting us share this great moment together. Let us not take for granted the air we breathe or the life you've given us. We were all created by you with one blood, all nations to dwell upon this land together. We are not enemies, but brothers and sisters. We're not adversaries, but we're allies. We are not foes, but we're friends. Let us be healed by the power of your love and united by the bond of your spirit. Today, we pray for our 45th president, the vice president, and their families, and give them the wisdom to guide this great nation, the strength to protect it, and the hands to heal it. We bless President Donald J. Trump. We ask that you give him the wisdom of Solomon, the vision of Joseph, and the meekness of Christ. Solomon, who kept peace among many nations, Joseph, who dreamt better for the people, and Christ, who accepted us all. O Lord, mend our hearts and stitch together the fabric of this great country in the spirit of the legendary gospel songwriter Mahalia Jackson. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe the Lord will see us through. I do believe we are on our way to victory. I do believe we will walk hand in hand. I do believe we shall live in peace. I do believe. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe America we shall overcome. May the Lord bless and keep America, make his face shine upon us, and be gracious unto us, and give us peace. In the mighty name of Jesus, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jackie Ivanko, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band. Please stand for the singing of the national anthem.
Through the perilous so gallantly streaming, and the rockets through the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the and the home of the
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing while the President and official party depart the platform. You will be released by sections shortly.
Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States. And the pendulum swings, as it does throughout our history. This time it swings toward a populist, isolationist philosophy, part of the American debate from the earliest days, which has found its 21st century voice in Donald Trump. Bob Schieffer, that was not, to my mind, the speech of a Republican or a Democrat. He excoriated both parties. He called the American landscape an American landscape which had factories from sea to sea that were shuttered, people out of work, American carnage, he called it.
I'm telling you, this was very strong stuff. Very strong stuff. I did not see any outreach either across the aisle or even to his own party. I mean, he basically took the hide off everybody sitting on that platform, telling them that politicians in Washington have prospered while the people out there had suffered, and he said it's going to stop here and now. He kept saying here and now, and just as you say, he talked about a more protectionist kind of trade policy, I would assume. We're going to buy American. We're going to hire American. He said we have enriched other governments and defended other borders while we fail to do that for our own borders. That is part of all this he's been talking about. Is NATO obsolete? I mean, we're going to be unpacking this speech for, it'll take us the rest of the day to get around to this. I'm not quite sure I've ever heard any inauguration speech quite like this one.
And here is Hillary Clinton, who won the popular vote in the election by 2.8 million votes. Donald Trump won by 77,000 votes when you add together the states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, the states that put him over the top. Donald Trump used the word, he said, protection will lead to great prosperity and strength. Protection generally meant as taxation of goods coming into the United States in order to give American goods an advantage in free trade. The American carnage, he said, stops right here and stops right now. You know, Bob, unlike most of these inaugural speeches, I didn't hear Donald Trump ask the American people to do anything.
Well, once again, as we've been talking about, people keep expecting some kind of a pivot from Donald Trump to move from primary elections to the general election to the presidency. He came here being Donald Trump, and this was, once again, very much what we saw throughout the last 2 years. This was Donald Trump.
Let's go down to Norah O'Donnell, Charlie Rose, Gayle King, and John Dickerson on the Mall.
Scott, thank you. I thought this speech was a call to arms rather than an appeal for unity. It was a populist message that got him to the presidency. Tough language, talking about eliminating the American carnage, talking about eliminating from the face of the earth radical Islamic extremism. It was a call to arms, Nora.
But we kept hearing that it would be a speech about unity and healing, and I kept waiting to hear something about unity and healing, and that never came. I think that's very surprising. And to say the way he slammed everything that has happened in the last 8 years with the president, the former president of the United States, sitting there, listening to that after they had just come from tea and coffee together. I think a lot of people are very surprised by this tone today.
Well, it lacked the soaring rhetoric of most inaugural addresses that speak to our better angels, as President Lincoln declared more than 100 years ago. Instead, he talked about righteous people and a righteous public. I don't know that I've ever heard an inaugural address where the words crime, drugs, gangs,
American carnage,
rusted out factories. So it was darker than most inaugural addresses. But it did speak to the electorate that put him in office, that feels that they have been left out.
It had echoes of his nominating speech at the Republican convention. This is a speech to, the emotional connection he had with that group of voters who felt Washington wasn't listening to them. But going back to Bob's point, the people arrayed around him were his first target. The politicians who not only acted too slowly, but who were venal in his description, who had sold out the American people, who were more interested in their comforts. He shot both parties, more interested in their comforts than the American people. That is about as big a criticism you can make of people in politics, and it's a criticism of the people with whom he's now going to have to work, not just leaving aside Barack Obama. On the rhetoric question, he was, to the extent that he deployed rhetoric, it was always in painting that dark, desolate, dangerous American landscape. There was none of that parceled out to anything uplifting or around which people could unify.
It was also a reaffirmation of his idea of America first. America first to restore jobs, America first in terms of taking people and bringing them back, whatever he means by make America great again.
I didn't hear a lot of applause while we're sitting here looking at the crowd. He got his biggest applause when he said, "We will eliminate ISIS." That was the first time that I heard a significant amount of applause while we're watching the crowd here. I'm curious to see how it played in the country, this speech.
And America first means that wall, that protection,
Yes.
the American jobs, American companies in America, no adventuresome overseas. These are battle lines within his own party, where you have a lot of Republicans who believe in free trade as a part of the capitalist system, and then secondarily who believe, as Ronald Reagan did, that there are values worth protecting and promoting overseas for their own sake, and that to promote them and to exercise U.S. power as a way to promote those ideas keeps America safe. This was a real clear break from that.
I just want to point out we're seeing now President Donald Trump and President Barack Obama. They are walking into the Capitol Rotunda. They are going now to what will be a luncheon with members of Congress and President Trump. And they will say goodbye to the first family, the Obamas, who will leave out the east front of the Capitol and board what is known traditionally as Marine One, but since he is no longer the sitting president, it will be called Executive One, and they will go on to their post-presidency life.
This is one more of the traditions that are part of every inaugural day. Meeting with the leaders of Congress after you make the inaugural speech.
In talking to people who've watched Donald Trump through his whole career, they define his opening gambit is often, as Richard Lefrak, one of his longtime friends, said, is to throw hand grenades at the beginning, destabilize everyone, and that it is in some instances a negotiating ploy, which is to say he knows ultimately he's going to have to be somewhere else, but if you start at the furthest edge, then you can come back to it.
We're on the National Mall, and on the other end of the U.S. Capitol is the Lincoln Memorial. And on the Lincoln Memorial are actually etched the words from President Lincoln's inaugural address. That's why these inaugural addresses matter. They get etched in stone. What of this address does he want to have etched in stone? And that will be something to look closely at, to mark his future monument, to mark his future library. These are the most iconic speeches, some of the most iconic things of American history.
Well, this one is likely to be known forever as the American Carnage speech. That was the most striking phrase in it. He was speaking to, in my estimation, and only to, the people who got him elected.
Let me just add one thing here. Let me just add one thing here, Charlie. When the first George Bush made his inaugural address, He said, "We meet on democracy's front porch, a grand place to talk as neighbors and friends. This is the day our nation is made whole." This was not a speech, a friendly speech to the neighbors. This was serving notice that there's a new guy on the block, and we're going to do things in a different way.
His way.
His way.
And it was a speech to those people who elected him. There we see the two, the former president and the new president, walking through Congress to attend a lunch together.
No.
I know President Obama's not going to the lunch. He's going to be saying goodbye to him. Then the president will come back.
This is the east front of the Capitol and the steps, and they will say goodbye. It's a beautiful wave goodbye.
And the Obamas will get on the helicopter and go to Joint Air Force Base.
Wonder what they're saying.
I don't know, but you think about this, and this is the way the former presidents have traditionally left. But think about back in the day of Harry Truman. He put his suitcases in the family car, and he and his wife drove back to Missouri. What a difference a few years makes.
President Obama kissing his wife's hand as they're preparing to head down the steps to the helicopter and leave Washington. President Trump said in his speech moments ago, "From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. It is going to be only America first." The new vice president sending off the old.
I remember the day that Ronald Reagan left, and Sam Donaldson of ABC News shouted the question, and Barbara Bush, who was about to go to the White House, said, "Oh, he got his last shout."
Barbara Bush and her husband, the former president, 92-year-old George Herbert Walker Bush, have been in the hospital. But late reports are that they are both doing much better. The former president has had pneumonia, but we are told that all signs are toward improvement, and they hope to have him out of the hospital soon.
So I guess the former vice president, he's going down to the railroad station and get on the Amtrak and go back to Delaware, which he did. And, you know, he commuted back and forth when he was in the Senate for so many years.
There has been a little bit of trouble in Washington. Far away from the ceremonies, there have been some unruly crowds, some broken store windows. At one point, the Metropolitan Police used pepper spray to quell those crowds, but some people came to town today bent on trouble, and that in no way has had any impact on the ceremonies here on the National Mall. Let's watch and listen now as the first African American president says his final goodbye. President Obama waves goodbye to the nation's capital as the helicopter formerly known as Marine One now prepares to lift off from the grounds of the Capitol. The new President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and the new First Lady are headed back into the Capitol for a traditional luncheon with members of Congress. And then he will be heading to the White House, and there will be hours of parades and festivities that go well into the night. President Obama said in his final news conference that he was looking forward to his time after the presidency. One of the things he said was he was looking forward to when he wouldn't have to hear himself talking all the time.
Some of us in television get that same feeling sometimes, Scott. It'll be interesting now. Some former presidents in years past, that helicopter is lifted off and then headed down the mall. And of course, we'll see if that's what they choose to do today, to give them one last look at Washington, where they have spent 8 previous years.
I'll have to check my history here, Bob, but Barack Obama is certainly one of the youngest former presidents in our history, if not the youngest. He has a long career ahead of him.
Yes, he does. And we'll now have 5 former presidents, which may be a record number. I'm trying to think back.
President Obama's inauguration day, his first inauguration day 8 years ago, it has been estimated that there were more than 1.6 million people in Washington. It was potentially the largest gathering in the history of the nation's capital.
Certainly the largest in the 47 years I've been here.
And they are off. A symbolic end to our traditional transfer of power. President Obama and, I should say, former President Obama and the former First Lady will be flown to Joint Base Andrews, as it's now called, the old Andrews Air Force Base. We can hear the helicopter going over our studio right now.
Just a couple 100 feet above where we are.
Right above us. Very short trip to Joint Base Andrews, and then they will board a plane and leave the Washington area. Going on vacation.
I'm always moved. I've watched a lot of presidents leave Washington, and it's always a touching moment, for want of a better phrase, for me. Some leave happily. I remember seeing Richard Nixon leave in one of the most bizarre and almost surreal kind of scenes that I saw at Andrews Air Force Base, waving goodbye as he always did, and yet he had just resigned the presidency. Lyndon Johnson left a beaten man. The war had worn him down, and yet, as the years went by, we came to recognize the enormous things that he had been able to do in the civil rights area. More than 400 pieces of significant legislation. We basically today live in Lyndon Johnson's America.
That is the tower of the Trump Hotel that the helicopter just flew by, the old 19th century post office building here in Washington. The former president said in his last news conference that his family, and his daughters in particular, were disappointed. There's the Washington Monument, of course. We're disappointed in the way the election turned out, but he also said, quote, "I think we're going to be okay," referring to the nation, the transfer of power, and the president's former residence, now the residence of President Trump and the new First Lady. Let's go down to Charlie Rose, Nora O'Donnell, Gayle King, and John Dickerson.
Scott, I'm looking at the speech that the new president just made, and he also said, it is time to remember that old wisdom. Our soldiers will never forget that whether we are black or blue, black or brown or white, we all bleed the same blood of patriots. And whether a child is born in the urban sprawl of Detroit or the windswept plains of Nebraska, they look up at the same night sky and they fill their hearts with the same dreams. That was what he also said near the end of this speech, but it was a call to action to put America first.
No, but following up on that, Charlie, there was a part that stuck out to me. When you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. And I hope that is at least a message that people take away from today.
I think it will be overshadowed by the direct message that he gave, and it was a warning to his own party, with whom we'll now see how things move in practice. But if you are a Republican, he is putting you on notice too. If you don't move fast enough and with the people's interests, he could deploy that kind of rhetoric towards Republican lawmakers, who he is, by today's actions and by his campaign. Remember, in campaign, Paul Ryan was one of his chief targets, that they will be as quickly on the wrong end of his view as perhaps Democrats. I mean, you can imagine Democrats being more pleased with some of the lines in that speech than traditional Republicans in terms of protectionism and America first.
This is now Donald Trump's Washington. And what you see on the left-hand side of the screen there is the congressional luncheon for him. This has actually been a tradition for more than a century, and there will be about 200 guests there, including the president and vice president, their families, Supreme Court justices as well, all gathered there for several hours. Major Garrett reported earlier today that Trump had asked if he could just skip the lunch and get straight to work because he wants to quickly put pen to paper and issue some executive actions. And it will be a very short inaugural parade after that. But there'll be some ceremony that we'll cover. But I think what we're getting a sense here is, we see represented by these pictures, Obama has said farewell. This is an end of an era. And
they're off to California, the family. I do like that he told Steve Kroft in 60 Minutes, Nora, that wherever he ends up tomorrow morning, he will not be setting his alarm.
And I assume that helicopter is making one last trip around Washington, as most presidents or former presidents want to do. Yes. Let us not forget that what we saw here at this inaugural day was a gathering of Republicans and Democrats, members of the Supreme Court and the Congress, all here to be part of what a democracy is about, the peaceful transfer of power, sometimes between people who do not see America in terms of policies the same way. And that was certainly true today.
We're seeing the Bidens now. That's actually a train station. They're at Union Station here, and
that was quick.
That was quick.
It's not far to go.
Yeah, they have held what's known as the 1 p.m. Excella for the Bidens, who will go back to Delaware. And for those who know, Vice President Biden, former Senator Biden, he went back home to Delaware every night. He's taken more than 8,000 round trips in his career on Amtrak.
He's been doing that since he was 29 years old.
Yes.
Should be due some free ones, I would imagine.
Yes.
Yes.
So he's back on the train. He's back on the train back home, also with Senator Carper there as well from the great state of Delaware. And no doubt many of the conductors and those who work on this Amtrak know Biden by name, and he may know their children's names.
I was going to say, and he knows them too.
Yeah.
He knows them too.
And Nancy Cordes has covered Vice President Biden and his time in the Senate, and she's also there on the Hill covering this luncheon. Nancy?
Hey, Nora. Well, the west front of the Capitol has now pretty much cleared out. And you know who one of the last people to leave was Steve Bannon, who is now going to be a close advisor to President Trump in the White House. He joined the campaign late in the game, and a lot of people have already said that they really heard a lot of Steve Bannon in that presidential address. It was very interesting. As the senators were filing out, I asked about 10 of them, Democrats and Republicans, what they thought of this speech. And frankly, they had very little to say. Most of them looked kind of shell-shocked. The Democrats, of course, disagreed with a lot of what Mr. Trump had to say, but don't want to go there on a day like today. And for the Republicans, they're mostly wondering how in the world they are now going to achieve some of the objectives that he laid out. How are they going to roll back the forces of globalization and modernization, which they believe are much more responsible for job losses than U.S. trade policies or U.S. tax policy, for that matter? How do they simultaneously cut taxes and make this enormous investment in infrastructure? How do they roll back Obamacare but cover everyone? This speech was as much a challenge to them as anyone, and they are going to be grappling with that challenge because, after all, if they aren't able to achieve the objectives that he has laid out, the objectives that a lot of Trump supporters are desperately hoping they can achieve, then they, along with Mr. Trump, will get the blame.
Nancy Cordes there on Capitol Hill as we take a look at these pictures for this congressional luncheon that is well attended by a group that's going to try and work together in these next several months to enact. Well, first they've got to vote on his cabinet, fill his government, and then fill his promises to the American people.
John, do you think the president helped himself or hurt himself with this speech?
Well, if he got elected because he was himself, then in this speech he was himself, and therefore he stuck with what brought him. I think if his goal was to unify people, I don't think this speech did that. I think that it's extraordinary. He's going to have this lunch after just describing all of the members he's eating with as total sellouts to the America, for their own comfort and selling out the American people. But his mode in business has been to do these big opening gambits and use that to control the negotiation. And this was his big opening gambit.
John, it has worked for him.
Yeah, it's a populist message that put him where he is today.
It put him where he is today. But on the other hand, he has to deal with the political rally, the landscape he faces, which is his approval ratings are low, and he has an intense following. But there is also a lot of nervousness in the country, and this probably deepened both of those feelings. The followers who got just what they wanted, and those who are nervous who are maybe more so.
Right. You said at one point, John, sometimes his MO is to throw down a hand grenade and then dial it back. Would you describe this as a hand grenade being thrown today?
I think so, yeah. To all of Washington, not just
it wasn't
Democrats.
It was definitely a bipartisan hand grenade.
You are watching CBS News coverage of the inauguration of Donald Trump. Coming up, the parade, and Donald Trump moving into the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue.
But never doing anything about it. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action.
This is what President Trump ran on all of this time, all of these months. This was the anti-establishment, anti-politician way, and he's carrying it through into his presidency. This is what the people here wanted to hear. That is what they were looking forward to hearing, was that he is going to continue this path of putting the people first. They were very, very excited to hear statements like that at Inagua.
All right, Simone Del Rosario reporting live from the Capitol at the inauguration. Our coverage here on RT America continues. Just absolutely outstanding to have you, Larry.
I'm going to be leaving you now, but
it was a pleasure, Larry.
I'll be seeing you twice a week with Politicking, every day with Larry King now, and whenever you want me here in Washington, I'll be happy to come and join the group.
We really appreciate your insight, Larry.
My insight and thoughts as I bring back the old-timers' thoughts.
Well, great
We can
insight.
work together.
We can
Thank you,
do
Larry.
it together.
It's better
and
when we do it together.
We will forge forward.
Yes, we will.
In a new dress.
We'll do a lot of things.
In the new vision, right?
Larry, I'm Ed
We will
Schultz
make
along with
RT.
Anya Parnbill, Larry King. We're right back.
We'll make RT great again.
You are watching the inauguration of U.S. President Donald Trump worldwide on RT.
We have breaking news.
Evidence of weapons of mass destruction.
Major combat operation.
The helicopter we were traveling in was forced down after being hit by an
internet video. Thousands of protesters have gathered in Moscow. Here, no one fakes stories at CNN.
We're promulgating fake news.
There should be an investigation.
I want to share some information we just learned.
The presidential race is over. A CNN exclusive.
The Russian hacking question.
Operatives claim to have compromising information.
You learn about this, you're learning from us.
You are fake news.
I'm Tom Harpin, and I'll give you what the mainstream media can't, the big picture.
There's been no charges filed against him.
Preserve, protect, and defend. And when you question more, you find what you're looking for.
This is the legislative branch of
We'll go deeper, investigate, and debate, all so you can get the big picture.
Welcome back to Inauguration 2017 worldwide here on RT.
The U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. The inauguration is complete. Donald Trump is the 45th President of the United States, a man who said that we will determine the course of America and the world. He talked about the struggles of America, what has to be done, how they will get the job done. And it was very interesting that he said that we will not impose our way of life on other nations. I'm Ed Schultz along with Anya Parnbill. We'll have a lot of guests for you and recapping the speech that you just saw here on RT. Very interesting, and from the standpoint that the speech was not lofty academic material, it was not historically based, it was very direct to the American people about what we're going to do as a country fixing the problems that we are facing. And early on, he pitted Washington, D.C. against the people.
Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families all across our land.
Back with Anya Parnbill. Can I just say that I heard a little bit of Bernie Sanders through this speech today?
We didn't even talk about this ahead of time, and I was thinking the same thing, Ed. And I was wondering if Paul Ryan or Bernie Sanders related more to some aspects?
Struggling families.
And talking
Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. For too many of our citizens, a different reality exists. Mothers and children trapped in poverty in our inner cities. Rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape of our nation. An education system flush with cash, but which leaves our young and beautiful students deprived of all knowledge. And the crime, and the gangs, and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. We assembled here today are issuing a new decree to be heard in every city, in every foreign capital, and in every hall of power. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first. I will fight for you with every breath.
Bueno, nosotros estamos aquí para las deportaciones y también estamos a la violencia. Pues todo lo que está haciendo aquí este señor. ¿Por qué? Porque es un fascista.
Sign says Trump is toxic. We got Never Trump. We got the resistance here. Black Lives Matter. Love Trump's hate, of course, everywhere. Anti-fascist groups. It looks like they got a pretty large area right here. Nice Trump you got there.
Thank you.
Yeah, did you make that yourself?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I was gonna say it's really creative. So, what inspired that exactly? I mean, other than of course Trump. I mean, just was it your idea? I mean, or did you see it online or something?
I didn't have to be inspired. I was working in Guatemala, and they have a yearly tradition to burn devil piñatas to purge the evil spirits of the year. And since Donald Trump represents those evil spirits this year, everyone was burning Donald Trump piñatas.
Right.
So
okay. So you're a missionary from Guatemala, or
no, I work in international development.
Okay, international development, Guatemala, and one of their traditions in their culture is
Quema del Diablo.
Okay.
Devil burning.
Devil burning. So in kind of your own twist on their tradition, you've incorporated that into this inauguration to kill the devil Trump by getting rid of this. So this is going to get this. What they do? Drive out their evil spirits by doing this? Is that what they do?
I don't get the impression that President-elect Trump is really interested in healing his spirit at all. So I don't really have any hopes for it. But I just had to be here today and express my voice.
Right, and what's the hat? The hat, what is that?
It means I love Colorado.
Love Colorado. Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So we got all kinds of stuff going on here at the inauguration today. Obviously, we're waiting on the parade here. This is going to be a happening spot here in a couple hours when the parade comes through. But let's check out some more of these signs.
The people who are out here saying that Trump is not our fundamental problem. If Trump and Clinton are the best that this system can offer, then the fundamental problem is the system. Because it's Obama in office right now and the Democrats, they're talking about a peaceful transition to power. So with all this organization, all these police out here, all this, the media and everything, they couldn't do that if the Republicans and the Democrats weren't in cahoots. And what we see in the media when they talk against each other is just a faction, two factions within the camp of our enemy disagreeing with each other. So we got to be clear who our enemy is. We got to be clear what our enemy is. The Obama administration and all administrations already started the road to austerity.
Now we have the split screen. This is the congressional luncheon on your left, and former President Obama and Michelle Obama at Joint Base Andrews with a departure ceremony.
Into our communities to kill our young people and increase the mass incarceration. We can have community control over the police. A lot of people say.
You know, Michelle and I, we've really been milking this goodbye thing. So it behooves me to be very brief. Yes. You know, I've said before, and I will say again, that when we started on this journey, we did so with an abiding faith in the American people and their ability, our ability, to join together and change the country in ways that would make life better for our kids and our grandkids. That change didn't happen from the top down, but it happened from the bottom up. It was met sometimes with skepticism and doubt. Some folks didn't think we could pull it off. There were those who felt that the institutions of power and privilege in this country were too deeply entrenched. And yet, all of you came together in small towns and big cities, a whole bunch of you really young, and you decided to believe. And you knocked on doors and you made phone calls and you talked to your parents who didn't know how to pronounce Barack Obama. And you got to know each other. And you went into communities that maybe you'd never even thought about visiting, and met people that on the surface seemed completely different than you, didn't look like you or talk like you or watch the same TV programs as you, and yet once you started talking to them, it turned out that you had something in common. And it grew and it built. And people took notice. And throughout, it was infused with a sense of hope. And as I said in 2004, it wasn't blind optimism that drove you to do all this work. It wasn't naivete. It wasn't willful ignorance to all the challenges that America faces. It was hope in the face of difficulty, hope in the face of uncertainty. You proved the power of hope. And throughout this process, Michelle and I, we've just been your front men and women. We have been the face, sometimes the voice, out front on the TV screen or in front of the microphone, but this has never been about us. It has always been about you. And all the amazing things that happened over these last 10 years are really just a testament to you. In the same way that when we talk about our amazing military and our men and women in uniform, the military is not a thing. It's a group of committed patriots willing to sacrifice everything on our behalf. It works only because of the people in it. As cool as the hardware is, and we got cool hardware, as cool as the machines and weapons and satellites are, ultimately it comes down to remarkable people. Some of them a lot closer to Malia's age than mine or Michelle's. Well, the same thing's true for our democracy. Our democracy is not the buildings. It's not the monuments. It's you being willing to work to make things better and being willing to listen to each other and argue with each other and come together and knock on doors and make phone calls and treat people with respect. And that doesn't end. This is just a little pit stop. This is not a period, this is a comma in the continuing story of building America. So to all of you that have put your heart and soul not just into our campaigns, but into making schools better, making sure our veterans got the care they needed, making sure that we left behind a planet that is safe and secure for our kids, making sure that hardworking people had a ladder of opportunity and could support families. For all of you who have just done amazing, remarkable work, most of it unheralded, most of it without fanfare, most of it without you getting any word of thanks, we could not be proud of you. I could not be proud of you. This has been the privilege of my life, and I know I speak for Michelle as well. And we look forward to continuing this journey with all of you. And I can't wait to see what you do next. And I promise you I'll be right there with you. All right? God bless you. Thank you, everybody. Yes, we did. Yes, we can. God bless America.
Former President Obama at Joint Base Andrews preparing to leave for his vacation in Palm Springs. This is a split-screen kind of day, and as we have been listening to the former president's remarks, we have been watching the new president, Donald Trump, affixing his name to a number of orders. It's mostly housekeeping things. For example, General James Mattis, who has been nominated to be Secretary of Defense, needed a waiver because, according to the law, you have to be out of the military a certain number of years before you can serve as Secretary of Defense, a civilian post. And General Mattis needed a waiver from the president in order to be able to do that because he hasn't been out of uniform the requisite period of time. He's speaking to the leader of the Democrats right now, Nancy Pelosi, the leader of the Democrats in the House. He's also signed a proclamation that names a National Day of Patriotism. So nothing momentous here so far, but a number of housekeeping items and symbolic items that the 45th President of the United States, that signature you're seeing right there, has now become the signature of the President, and he will be going off to this luncheon that we've been describing to you shortly.
It's a tough group of people we have. They're learning the hard way.
Exactly. Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, on the right side of the screen wearing the blue tie there. And, of course, the new Vice President, Mike Pence, on the left.
It's a rough group, isn't it?
It is. I'm happy to be.
Next. I think we're going to need some more pens, by the way.
These are also, we are told, the formal nominations for each member of his cabinet. Now, all of those members of the cabinet, or at least many of them over the last week or so, have already been in their confirmation hearings before the U.S. Senate. So this is some of that paperwork that Donald Trump has campaigned against in Washington, having to make those nominations official with the signature of the president. The paperwork begins.
Everyone's done.
Now, Bob Schieffer, everyone is smiles in this picture. We see the Democratic leader, Senator Schumer, is laughing and smiling with that pen in his hand. Nancy Pelosi laughing and smiling. They're not going to be getting along with Donald Trump on everything, and not his own party either.
Well, that was what was so remarkable about this speech that he made, where he did not make any attempt at all to reach across the aisle, but even more surprising, any attempt really to reach to his own party. I mean, this in many ways, Scott, it was not a victory for the Republican Party. It was a victory by Donald Trump. I remember going up to Capitol Hill just before the Republican convention, and I couldn't find a single leader of the Republicans in the Senate who thought that he was going to win. I went, as we all did, out to the Republican convention. They were still talking about how can we save the majority in the Senate. Nobody thought that they were going to win. So they're still kind of getting over the surprise of the election, and I think that just adds to the kind of as Nancy Cordes said, the sort of shell-shocked reaction to the speech.
The president's granddaughter has a federal job, apparently, as the passer of the pens. And you may wonder why so many pens. Well, it's not because the president is running out of ink. It is a Washington tradition that the president takes a pen, signs a document, and hands it as a gift to one of his supporters or perhaps a sponsor of legislation. And so a lot of pens get used and a lot of pens handed out as gifts from the President of the United States.
Lyndon Johnson was very good at that. And when he signed the Civil Rights Act, he gave the first pen to Everett Dirksen, who was the leader of the Republicans. And his daughter Lucy told me later, she said, "Why did you do that, Dad?" He said, "Because if I hadn't had Dirksen with me, we'd have legislation. Now we have a law." These are valued souvenirs.
Let's bring in Anthony Mason. Anthony, as you watch this scene, what do you make of all of this?
Well, I was struck by what you referred to before, Scott, which is how chummy everybody looks today, and you realize it's not going to last long. This may be the best we see. I mean, and I was also struck in that speech of what a kind of apocalyptic economic landscape the president described. Factories scattered like tombstones, and by implication blaming basically everybody on that podium.
Everybody in Washington.
Everybody in Washington, all the former presidents who were sitting there, the Republican leaders who were sitting there, and I was struck. It was the speech not of a politician, but of an executive, a CEO who's used to being able to order things to change. And it will be interesting to see, how he responds to the way Washington works, looking forward. I was struck by a quote in the paper from former Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson, who of course was a former CEO, came to Washington to work in the Bush administration, and he said, "You succeed in Washington by collaborating."
I remember asking Donald Trump in an interview for 60 Minutes if he understood that being President of the United States is not being CEO of the President of the United States, that Congress would have a say and the Supreme Court would have a say, and he said to me, quote, "We'll see," end quote.
Well, presidents succeed by persuading, not ordering. And that's the difference. How many people have come to Washington and say, we'll run it like a business?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a business.
Alex Wagner, Anthony's co-host on CBS This Morning, Saturday. What are your thoughts after watching the speech and seeing the former president departing?
Well, it is indeed a different tone in that room than it was on the stage, Scott. I was struck by the dystopian nature that everyone, I think, has mentioned at this point. I was also struck by the fact that we keep talking about populism. At one point, the president said, on January 20th of 2017, it will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again. That's certainly a message we've heard on the campaign trail, but as it concerns the very people that President Trump is putting in his cabinet, this is the richest cabinet perhaps in American history. And I think there will be a real question about how much of his agenda is truly geared to the people of this nation. It'll be interesting to see these cabinet confirmations as they proceed. We know Chuck Schumer has announced that General Mattis and General John Kelly are likely to be confirmed for defense and homeland security.
And confirmed today, maybe within hours.
Exactly. And on Monday, Mike Pompeo for the CIA.
So they're getting the national security team in first.
Indeed.
And in terms of the Secretary of Defense, at least, they're going to try to get that done today. Donald Trump is now going to go into the luncheon. It's a private luncheon. We won't be able to see what's happening there. He did ask his staff at one point whether he could skip the luncheon and go straight to the White House and go to work. But the luncheon's been held in every inauguration for about 100 years, and they decided that that was perhaps a tradition that he shouldn't break. That's Statuary Hall in the Capitol, where the luncheon will commence shortly. And then after the luncheon, after about an hour or so, the president will head down Pennsylvania Avenue toward the White House. It'll be a long procession, probably will walk part of the way if history is any guide. It was supposed to rain all day in Washington, and it is dark and cloudy, but we don't see any rain coming down just at the moment, and it's about 44 degrees, so it's fairly pleasant out there, and we would expect the new president and first lady to walk part of the way down Pennsylvania Avenue. That is the White House, of course, the North Lawn, and you can't quite see it, but at the bottom of your screen there's an enormous reviewing stand that has been built right there on the part of Pennsylvania Avenue that crosses in front of the White House, 1800 Pennsylvania, and that's where the parades will be going through. The president and the first lady and other dignitaries will be watching a number of parades going by well into the afternoon. This may be, watch carefully, the last moment of friendship and comity among the Democrats and Republicans in the Capitol. This is a historic moment and one that should not be missed. There's the former governor of Texas who has been nominated to be Secretary of Energy.
I think we probably ought to point out that that speech really was directed at the people who voted for Donald Trump.
And no one else.
And yes, but as we saw throughout the campaign, people kept saying you've got to broaden your appeal. He instead simply doubled down on the people who were with him from the beginning, and I think that's probably, the folks that like him, they're going to love that speech.
Well, the inauguration,
but it's not going to make it any easier for him to get anything done, because you can't just decide I'm going to do this or that in Washington. You have to get help, number one, from your own party, and then you're going to need some help across the aisle.
Inauguration speeches are almost always about binding the wounds that were created in the election, and you did not hear very much of that today.
No.
And what's interesting is there was perhaps the suggestion from President Trump's top advisors this would be a speech about magnanimity, about a speech for the American public on a whole, not just the electorate that put him into office. One wonders to what degree they truly have the president's ear in a moment.
You know, Alex, that's it.
It was always before the inauguration day. Will continue here on CBS in just a moment.
The election of the United States' first female president is said to be the most difficult transfer of power in history.
The president-elect despises us all.
She's persuadable.
After the inauguration, their hands will be tied.
I'm an ex-spy defending clients on terrorism charges. You worry about the fate of the world.
I don't think you understand how vulnerable you are. Stand down.
You stand down.
Homeland, new episodes, Sundays at 9, only on Showtime. Start your free trial now.
The one politician you can rely on.
Good afternoon, Madam Secretary.
Is Secretary of State Elizabeth McCord.
You're kind of my hero.
I don't like you going to a country that's preparing for war.
I'm talking about doing what's right.
You know, there's nothing we can do.
That's what they always say, until somebody does.
Taya Leone is Madam Secretary.
If we're gonna make history, let's make the good kind.
Madam Secretary.
Implications toward China are going to potentially lead to armed conflict. And it's not only Trump, it's also Rex Tillerson. In Tillerson's testimony, he said we're going to block Chinese access to the islands in the South China Sea. What does that mean? That means potentially armed conflict with China. The one thing China has been is inflexible when it comes to its holdings and interests in the South China Sea.
And they've also gone against the Hague ruling as well about the sovereignty of those waters, which goes against the global community.
Right, but every major power goes against Hague rulings if it hurts their interests. So this is part, the United States, as we know, has done the same thing.
What about Trump's rise alongside Shinzo Abe in Japan? He was the first world leader to meet with Trump after his election. The next day in Trump Tower with Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner right there. What was the implication of that?
Well, Abe had to make up for some blunders during the campaign. He basically ignored Trump, met with Clinton. Abe, like everybody else, drank the Kool-Aid and assumed that Trump had no chance to win.
Okay.
And during the campaign,
Sounds good.
Trump said some things that were very provocative to Japan. He said that Japan's not paying its fair share, as he said about Europeans also. He questioned America's bases in Japan. We've got still 50,000 troops left over from World War II. He questioned Japan being under the nuclear umbrella, said maybe Japan should have its own nuclear weapons to counter North Korea. Most people in the international community thought that that was absurd, crazy. But he talked about not only nuclear proliferation, South Korea, Saudi Arabia. He said things that made people's heads spin in Tokyo.
John Nichols, your thoughts on what we may be headed for with China? Rocky relations right now. How does Trump smooth them out?
Well, I mean, he is
90 minutes now, and Mike Pence, of course, is vice president. In his inaugural address, President Trump lashed out at Washington establishments, saying for too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. You are looking at pictures now of the congressional luncheon that the new president and first lady will be attending with members of the House and the Senate on both sides of the aisle. And this is Joint Base Andrews on the right side of the screen, what used to be called Andrews Air Force Base, and you see the outgoing president, Mr. Obama, saying goodbye to the well-wishers there. He just spoke to a large crowd at Andrews, and he will be getting on a plane with his family and heading to Palm Springs, California, at a nice vacation. He said during his news conference a few days ago that he was looking forward to a time when he didn't have to hear himself talk so much. It's a split-screen kind of day with the incoming president on the left, the outgoing president on the right, and we have our Major Garrett, who has been covering these events all morning long. Major?
Scott, let's talk about what we just saw at the Capitol before this luncheon. President Trump signing the official paperwork, submitting the nominations of his cabinet nominees to the United States Senate. In that, you can see the outlines, I would say, the modest outlines of a compromise between President Trump's inclinations and working something out with Congress. And what do I mean by that? Well, as we've discussed this morning, originally President Trump didn't even want to go to the luncheon. He wanted to get to work, to do something. So what do we see? A compromise where he does something. It was formulaic paperwork, to be sure, could have been filled out before, but he attends the luncheon, something he wasn't inclined to do initially, as an act of deference and respect to the legislative branch of our federal government, but also he gets to do something. Put this paperwork formally before the United States Senate, showing his respect for it, but also projecting to the country that he's president, he's in charge, and he's moving ahead. So this, in a very, very small way, in a picture way, to be sure, illustrates the ability to work out a compromise. Now, I'm not suggesting, nor should we interpret that as a path now wide open to future compromise with Congress, but it does give you an insight about his inclinations and putting together something that he's comfortable with in the end. And let me, if I can, Scott, offer a couple of observations about the inaugural address, seeing as I attended more than 75 rallies for Donald Trump, the candidate. That speech is entirely consistent with the message that he gave to those who supported him and came to his rallies by the thousands and thousands throughout the campaign. And I guarantee you, if we were to ask him right now, President Trump would say, "What do you expect me to say? I told the people I would carry this message to Washington. What better opportunity to carry it on my first day as president, to carry their voice and not the voice of Washington." Scott?
And Major, let's have a look at the president, former president, and first lady as they wave goodbye.
There's a lot of concern here in Europe over just how Donald Trump will rule. A lot of the same concerns that have been heard in the United States have been echoed here. To be honest, many people here 18 months ago only knew Donald Trump